All right, so today we're going to talk about chapter 15. For those of you who aren't here, I told the ones here in class that we're going to cover chapter 15 today. We will not have class on Thursday. We will meet again next Tuesday and hopefully cover chapter 16, and then we'll be done with the book. At that point, I will give you, whenever day we're going to finish, I will hand y'all the test that covers the last few chapters and y'all can take it. And I'll give you a time when you have to have it turned in to me by. Don't have that set in stone because I'm not sure how long, whether we'll finish 15 today and get 16 done next Tuesday or not. But we will meet next Tuesday, just not this Thursday. So let me share the screen to the PowerPoint. And we'll run through this. So the last chapter, looking back, we talked about managing risk and safety and about legal aspects when we're talking about healthcare. And then, in our circumstance, we're talking about therapeutic rec healthcare. So this one, we're not so much looking at risks and things like that. What we want to do is make sure that what we provide is quality healthcare. And we've got different ways that there's listed here. You've got on this screen, you've got a triad of healthcare concerns people want. And this is basically what everybody is looking for when they're talking about healthcare. They want high quality healthcare, obviously, right? They want cost reduction in healthcare, cheapest price you can get, and then improved access to healthcare. And that's just like a continuum of what we're trying to provide in any kind of service area where we're helping people. That's what our consumers are looking for at the very least. So I'll put it that way. So what exactly is quality? Since we're talking about managing service quality, it's listed here. It's the degree to which services increase the likelihood of desired outcomes and care consistent with current practice. So how often are we reaching goals? How often are we reaching objectives? Are we seeing the patients that we're supposed to see when they're scheduled to come in? Are we seeing our patients recover, recuperate, improve at the same level that we're expecting to see based on, current practice statistics around the country area? So the customer role determines the relative importance of quality patient-centered care. We have to make sure that, and that's something that I've stressed from day one in TR, is that it's patient-centered, that it's individualized, that it's, it's not one size fits all, that it is patient-centered. So we have to remember that and make sure that what we're doing is centered around, that picture that we had a minute ago, where we're trying to do this for each one of the patients. The concept of quality is talking about the achievement of some pre-established standard or desired level of service. So quality is a ideal that someone has to come up with a certain, we want to reach this level. It's a pre-established standard or level that you're trying to get to. And something that we see because of the changes in information that we get, because of the changes in technology, because of the changes of things that we have access to, maybe the patients that we're dealing with, all sort of things that change around us. Quality in many cases is a moving target. So remember that it's not always the same thing, is not always expected, depending on what you're working with and what you have as far as facilities, financial backing, number of, now the thing that we have to try to do as a managerial role, we've talked about where sometimes we might have staffing issues, something like that. If we have people, a fewer number of staff than we really need, or that we had at one point, what our hope is that we can provide the same level of service to our people with the number of staff that we do have, without drop off in quality. That's what so that's a hard thing to do sometimes, but that's a good manager can get the most out of their employees and kind of make that happen in a lot of cases. So definitions of quality, some of the key words, it's kind of what I think of on this. The Institute of Medicine, when they think about quality, they think about, is it safe? Is it effective? Is it patient-centered? Is it timely, efficient, and equitable? So equitable just means fair, basically. Everybody's getting equitable treatment. World Health Organization, a lot of the same things. When they look for quality, they're looking at effectiveness, efficiency, accessibility, which is one that's not really, it kind of fits in with the Institute of Medicine's equitable, but they're different. Acceptability and patient-centeredness, equity and safety. So a lot of carryover, a lot of commonality between those two, but not exactly the same. So that is the definition from like high ups as far as what they look for as quality. Now, what does the consumer think of as quality might be a little different than that. So the consumer, they are the customer in the exchange process. They're the one that's coming in for a service. So, you know, what's the thing they always say? The customer is always right, right? Sometimes the customer is wrong, but you still have to treat the customer with respect and try to do what you can to help them reach goals and help keep them happy as much as possible. But the consumer as the customer in the exchange, in the exchange process, they effectively determine their own relative importance of quality. So patients in healthcare facilities tend to judge quality of care by the interpersonal aspects of the clinical process because these aspects are the most obvious to them. So that's saying in many cases, a lot of the patients, they want that human touch, that smile, that, hey, how are you doing? They want to feel accepted. They want to feel like you're glad to see them, that you care about them, that you have like what you would call in a doctor's office or a surgeon or something. You've heard people say, oh, he's a great surgeon, but he's just got no bedside manner. You know, bedside manner is kind of the key. That's basically saying he's kind of an asshole, but he does really good work. You know, he's very blunt. He doesn't really sugarcoat anything. That's kind of what it boils down to. And a lot of consumers or patients, they won't be satisfied with that, even though they had a successful surgery, because they feel like the surgeon was not nice. You know, they wouldn't be satisfied because they didn't have the interpersonal aspects that they wanted to get out of it. So we have to remember that when people come in, they're looking a lot of times for friendliness and feeling like you're focusing on them just as much as they are the actual reason why they're there. You know, they might be there to improve balance, but they want some socialization out of that too. You see that especially in older populations. You know, they thrive on, many cases, they are, you know, how hard it is to get away from elderly people sometimes if you get to talking with them and you find yourself like backing toward the door and they're still talking and following you. And I'm telling a true story that happened with me and my father this morning. It was the same thing. And finally I was like, look, I got to get to work. but that kind of is a good example of how that plays in sometimes. So in order to make sure that what was being provided, there were some different initiatives put forth that are listed here on the PowerPoint to help push quality as far as what's being put out. And it talks about all of these things in the book on a deeper level than what we'll talk about here. But in the 60s, you had the Program Planning and Budgeting System, PPBS. Then we've all heard of zero-based budgeting. That's another quality initiative that came out. 70s, I like this one, management by objectives. Obviously, I like that because of the TR. That's part of our TR thing. Quality circles. In the 80s, we had quality assurance, which is there are departments now on a lot of campuses, work sites that actually have a quality assurance department. Total quality management and continuous quality improvement, which are the big part of the rest of this chapter. Actually, this stuff from the 80s here, TQM, total quality management, and CQI, continuous quality improvement. You'll see that in the book. It's actually written out that way a lot. They drop the words and go to CQI and TQM, and that's kind of how they cover it. So we'll jump to total quality management, and what that was about is that's just a management philosophy that's applied to all individuals, departments, units within an organization. And what you're doing, it's an approach based on a quest for progress and continual improvement as far as cost, reliability, quality, innovative efficiency, and business effectiveness. So it's getting the most bang for your buck and the most output for what you have available is what it all comes down to. You're looking to make sure that you are always looking to cut cost when you can as a provider. Some of you have had the class where I asked you to come up with recreation therapy ideas that were like cheap yet fun and effective for the people. And we had people doing 2-liter bottles and rolling a basketball at them for bowling, filled up with water. And you can fill the 2-liter bottles up with different amounts of water. Would that still be fun for the patients, even though it's not real bowling pins? Would that be cheaper than buying a fake bowling set? Would it be significantly cheaper than taking them to the bowling alley? That's the kind of thing that you can look at, and you don't want to cheat your patients, but you need to think outside the box. And that's where you can help with like the areas of cost. Quality is keeping up with what you're, learning everything you can in order to stay up to date with trends and stay up to date with new treatments that may be out there. Innovative efficiency, that goes along that same line. You're looking to see what's working in today's world. And then business effectiveness comes down to a lot of the things that we talked about before, like scheduling, planning your staff accordingly and correctly, and things like that are going to make your business run smoother and more effective. The other one that we talked about is CQI, or continuous quality improvement. And what this is all about, you're systematically monitoring, you're evaluating and improving effectiveness and efficiency of work procedures through teamwork. And there is the Deming, however you want to say it, cycle. It's on page 244. There's a little, if you want to make a note of that, it makes it easy to see. But it is exactly what we had, I think it was 2 slides back. Deming's plan, do, check, and act cycle is what it comes down to. So, and all it really amounts to is you plan a change, you implement it, you evaluate it. Does this sound kind of familiar? We skipped the assessment part because we're not dealing with the person here, but like when we're trying to improve what we're putting out at a facility, as far as our treatment of patients and how well we're doing things, we plan a change to see if it's going to make things better or worse. Basically, implement it, evaluate, and at that point you either standardize it and make that this is how we do this now, or you drop it. That's what the Deming cycle is all about. So that's just a way of explaining how you try changes. It's very, in simplified, it makes it seem harder than it really is. You're just trying something to see if it works. If it works, you stick with it. If it was ineffective, then you say, we're going to scrap that. But we tried it. because we're trying continuously to make sure that we're improving our quality. See what this is how it works, and it's makes it seem harder than it really is. It's not much to it. Quality assurance. I've heard about this a lot. My wife used to be in the QA department. She was a QA for some of our group homes in the NMRC network for a while. And quality assurance, it's all about monitoring and evaluating service quality through the ongoing use of standards and mechanisms that evaluate services to ensure that standards are met. So quality assurance, when you work in that department, which she did, she would, a lot of times, you know, some of the staff, when she would pull up, they'd probably be like, oh, here she is, and we didn't know she was coming. She'd show up unannounced because she didn't want them to know she was coming, because what do you do when you have company come over? Clean up, right? Hide everything you can't have out, you know, whatever the case may be. That's kind of the case. If she said, hey, I'm coming over to the house tomorrow, they're gonna pick up everything that's unsafe. They're gonna, if they have staff that haven't been properly in-serviced on treatment protocols or something, they're gonna in-service them, where if she asks them, they're gonna be able to spout that stuff off and they're gonna look great. But if she shows up unannounced, she can walk in and see that there's like a box being stored up on the ledge that could fall on somebody's head, and that nobody is monitoring the clients when they go in the bathroom and run the hot water, and that they are, instead of letting them, the clients that can feed themselves actually feed themselves, they're like feeding it to them so they can do it faster. Things like that. She's checking, or in this situation, in this field, developmental disabilities, those are the kind of things they're looking for. Safety issues, they're looking for active treatment. Are they actually spending time working with the patients? Are they doing individualized programming? Things like that, that what they're doing is they're kind of the internal watchdogs, or the internal surveyors that keep us constantly prepared for when the accreditation committees, like the big surveyors, come in that can shut you down if you're doing things wrong. They make sure that we're doing it right continuously. They check to make sure that you're giving clients choices. They check to make sure that you're doing all these things that we need to be doing, and that we're going to be checked on down the road. So when they show up unannounced, they can be prepared. By nothing should have to change if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. When the quality assurance coordinator shows up or the state surveyors show up, we should be able to just keep on doing what we always do if we're doing our job properly. So they're looking at all these different standards to make sure that they're fit, are met, and they look at evaluation in 3 areas, and they're listed as structure, process, outcome. You know, they look at things like making sure for the NMRC clients, even in the group homes, they have 24-hour schedules. And that sounds kind of ridiculous to have a 24-hour schedule. This is where you're going to be at 8. This is where you're going to be at 9:30. Like, you can look at this thing for everybody, and by rule, that's where they're supposed to be at each. Now, periodically something happens and they may not be there, but she would make sure that people were following 24-hour schedules. You know, if they were supposed to go to aquatics class from 1 to 3, were they taking them to aquatics class, or were they saying, hey, you don't really want to go swimming today, do you? Wouldn't you rather just watch TV in the cottage? Because staff do things like that because it's easier than actually lugging them up there and getting them dressed, and you know, it's easier. And so that's, those 24-hour schedules and such are there for a reason, you know, not just to make sure that they're doing what they should at a certain time, but also where, like, when the surveyors come in, they can they pull it up for the ones that they're going to track, and they say, okay, it's 2 o'clock, they're supposed to be at this building, and they go there, and if they're not, then somebody has to answer for why they're not. So that's the kind of thing that we're talking about structure. When you talk about the process, are we using, for us, it will be the API process, really. Are we following the proper protocol in planning and treatment, assessment, evaluation, all of those things? And then outcomes, are we getting the type outcomes that we should be getting? Are we having desirable or undesirable outcomes? Have we had any injuries from what we're offering and things like that? Those are the things that they look for. And that's, if they see those kind of things, they make those changes to make sure that it doesn't continue happening. So they know that in any care type area, when we're treating patients, that there are thresholds that have to be there for variances. It's like I said, we don't know exactly how everyone is going to respond to treatment and is going to respond to what we offer them. So there has to be some degree of what's acceptable as far as positive and negative variances in outcomes. Basically, we have to just decide, are we meeting 80%? Is that okay? Or does it need to be 60? That's going to, because of our clientele that we're working with. Indicators in therapeutic rec, they're prepared for each component of the API process. So there's quality assurance in that I would say that would fit in the process portion of evaluation, where they're looking at every component of API to make sure that they're doing it in the most effective, best quality way that it can be done. So that's what quality assurance is about. Constantly looking to make sure that what's being done is being done to the proper standards. That's quality assurance. That's nutshell. Quality improvement, that's when a lot of times it happens because when you're doing quality assurance, you see that there's a deficit or something needs to be fixed. Something's not being done as effectively as, or we're not having as good a results as we want. So then you need to look at quality improvement. It's not always caused by something going wrong. We also need to evaluate all the time to see where we can improve anyway. So when you are looking to improve quality, you got to ask certain questions that they list here. What are we trying to accomplish? How will we know that a change is an improvement? So how are you going to measure when you implement a change, what are we looking at? Are we looking at attendance rate? Are we looking at, certain body fat composition? Are we looking at cardiovascular health, blood pressure? I mean, you can look, you have measurables that you can actually use, and those are just some that just popped into mind. And then what change can we make that will result in improvement? So we've got quality assurance and then quality improvement are two different things, but they fit together pretty much. Evidence-based practices. This is something that we've talked about before and something that is used in, every field, not just rec therapy, not just medical fields, technology, everything across the board. If people have sense, they're going to use evidence-based practice. And what the definition they have here is the integration of the best research with clinical expertise and client values and preferences. The therapist is going to apply the best scientific evidence to each consumer's or patient's unique situation to make clinical decisions. So that's where we look back at to see. We have a patient come in who is 60 years old, female, and she's been diagnosed with fibromyalgia. She's got a lot of pain and she's depressed. And we look and we see that one of the most effective strategies, I mean, you can use Google, you can look at different books, you can, there's tons of different ways that scholarly articles, tons of areas where we can look these things up. But we say, okay, so what should we do with a 60-year-old female with fibromyalgia? So we just type in 60-year-old female fibromyalgia treatment, and we see that warm water aquatic therapy is very positive, has shown very positive results in the past for this patient. So we say, all right, we have a pool that we can maintain the temperature. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that with this patient, because what we've seen is that this has been successful in the past. So that's all evidence-based practice is all about. It worked before because I looked it up, or so-and-so told me they've worked with a bunch of these patients and this works for them. So we have evidence. That's why I talked about, we added D to API, documentation. So documentation, everybody writes these things down. What that documentation turns into is evidence, basically showing, hey, this worked for us. So you can use that evidence and turn it into what you're going to do. It saves you time. You're not just grasping at straws and saying, hey, let's just try this. You're using evidence to tell you this is the best route to go. So that's making it as simple as possible. You look up, find up something that worked before, and then you use it as long as it fits. Now, it says that you need to make it fit to each consumer's unique situation. Now, if this same lady has had her child drown and she's just scared to death of water, would this be a good option? Probably not. That's where we're talking about their unique situation. We might need to go to more of like a tub type situation for this patient rather than a pool, something that she felt more comfortable with. And then it talks about in this next little portion, evidence-based practices. It's a systematic approach used to identify documentable information that demonstrates TR intervention effectiveness. Does this program produce this outcome with this type of consumer? That's basically what we're looking for. So that's what you look for. And then you're going to have your own documentation. So what you've done as you've gone through the process is you've added more documentation and more evidence that this certain practice works. You're not necessarily having to, even if it's just word of mouth information at a conference to other people that you work with, that do the same things as you. So how do we get improvement through evidence-based practice? Your outcome measures quantify data and describe performance resulting from specific intervention with specific clients. So that tells you your outcomes, basically, did it work, did it not? So then you evaluate if results are consistent with indicators found in evidence-based practices. So by what we did we get the same results that we expected because warm water therapy worked before with this type patient? Was it effective with our patient? Then you assess the quality of care documents outcomes through the application of accountability processes that measure ongoing improvements in consumer safety and care. You're basically looking to make sure that what you're offering is up to date, is as effective as possible, and that you're using the best evidence to make your choices on what you're going to do with your patients. These slides are pretty wordy and pretty, I don't like, like that last portion right there was almost hard to read and understand, but you just want to make sure that you're doing the best you can based on the information that you were able to find. Then you're going to see if your outcome was what you expected or not, and that's going to tell you where to go with your treatment. And it gives you something to look at, like, well, did it not work for us because our water temperature was different? Did it not work for us because we didn't do exactly the same exercises? Or hey, it did work for us, so we're going to stick with this protocol if we have another patient come in the same type situation. So in evidence-based practices, which every health-related situation should be, the therapist is going to apply the best scientific evidence to each consumer's unique situation to make clinical decisions. So scientific evidence, that's it. That's why it's evidence-based. And yet it's going to be unique, individualized, personalized. We're going to make their own plan based on scientific evidence that's out there. Evidence-based practice as the integration of the best research with clinical expertise and client values and preferences. So that we're talking about, we're looking for good options based on evidence. However, we still need to run these things by our patients and say, hey, what do you think about this? Because you need them to be on board for them to follow along and really buy into what you're offering. If they haven't bought in 100% to what you're going to do, and you just tell them this is what you're doing, they're not going to be, you'll see that results won't be as good. So that's basically saying you need to make sure that what you offer aligns with things that they actually would like to do and that aren't breaking their personal values. You don't want to take someone who is adamantly against gambling on a trip to the casino. I don't know. That's not really a treatment protocol that you would be using evidence-based practice for, but I'm just saying that kind of fits in with the client values situation. The goal for the therapist is for the therapist to provide the best possible program that, based on available evidence, is shown to have the most desirable, intended, and meaningful outcomes. I feel like a lot of this is saying the same thing over and over. Y'all get what we're talking about here. It's got to be based on evidence and known to have the most desirable, intended, and meaningful. So you're getting the results that you want to get out of doing these things. If you're looking to reduce stress and you've found things that said that stress is reduced by doing this, this, and this, yoga, then you implement yoga. You want to make sure that you're getting those outcomes. Indicators are based on standards of practice, which is like, this is what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to do it. This is the level of care that we're supposed to provide. They're derived from literature, experts, and use of effectiveness evidence, which is like what I said. That could be anything from something that you would see at a conference, someone talking about this is what we offer and this is what we've seen and these are the results that we've had, to research results, to scholarly articles, to internet stories, to things that may be in the newspaper. Your evidence doesn't have to come from some specific, there's not some magical book of evidence that you use to find what's going to work best for each case and each specific client. You have to search those things out on your own, and through time you'll see that you won't have to look up and try to figure out what's the best strategy, because you'll know what it is and you have your own evidence because you've seen it with your own eyes. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to necessarily justify this is where it came from, because I've worked with this type patient before. This is what we did and it was effective. Therefore, you're using evidence-based practice, even though you're not doing a bunch of research to look up information. The evidence is your own. It's your own documents. It's in your own head and what you remember doing. All right. No class on Thursday. We will meet on next Tuesday and hopefully cover this last chapter, chapter 16. that will be the plan for now. I will grade your stuff that you turned in, I promise. But now the main thing is finishing up the rest of the project. Your notebook, you know, that's, well, I say notebook, that's what you're gonna upload. Finishing that up and getting your presentation ready for the end. I'll give you a take-home test for this last bit of information. It's again, it's kind of a smaller amount and it won't, I don't even think it'll be 100 points worth of points. But, and I'll give you plenty of time to finish it up too, so.
Will we turn on like to your office?
Either that or on just exam night even. We may just wait and I may just give you the rest of the time until our final exam when we do the presentations. That's probably what I will do, actually. So y'all have a good rest of your day. I will see you on Tuesday. Don't show up Thursday. Yeah, I don't think I have to worry about that with most of you. Y'all have a good day. See there, and still got out 30 minutes early. See y'all.
Adios.